Welcome to series of database management system video lectures. Today we will be discussing about Unit 5 Topic 6, that is complex integrity constraints and SQL with the triggers. So in the previous sessions as part of Unit 4, we have already discussed about what are constraints and how these constraints can be applied on a column level as well as on table level, and what are the various types of key constraints that can be applicable, right? So we are going into advanced integrity constraints or complex integrity constraints, which can be done with the help of stored procedures as well as triggers. So let us look at here what is a stored procedure is. A stored procedure is nothing but a function or a method which performs a specific operation. As you can relate this stored procedure to be any method or a function which can be written using any programming language to perform the operation. The main intention of designing methods or the functions is to perform a repetitive operations and which can be invoked for multiple number of times to perform the same operation. Similarly, a stored procedure is also a program written using SQL language to perform any operations repeatedly. Let us look at the syntax of the procedure. Create is a keyword. Procedure is a keyword. Give the procedure name here. And then when you wanted to take any parameters as the input, you can specify that. And you need to write as begin. Begin will indicate that you are going to define your procedure and put a block of code to perform the specific operation and then going with an end. Okay. Now, once after defining the procedure, we need to run it and then we need to execute. While execution of the procedure, we need to make a call to that procedure, like the way how do we do for a normal routine program. Okay. So now here I have created a table called as employees, wherein I have three attributes, that is employee ID, employee name, and then the first name of it. Okay. So now I have inserted few set of records here. Now let me create a stored procedure. Now to do that, the first one here is create a keyword procedure. I'm going to create a procedure upon the database AR of procedure name, that is get EMP name. This is going to be our procedure name. Now, in is going to be an input parameter, and I'm going to specify ID is going to be passed through my procedure. Only ID I'm going to supply while invoking my procedure, which is of type integer data type. Now, what you wanted to perform, that you can specify using a begin statement. Now, I wanted to retrieve only those set of records whose employee ID matches to the given ID number, right? To do that, let me write a simple query. Select employee names from the employees table where the ID matches with the employee ID. Okay. So, while running our program, I will be supplying the ID of the employees, right? Once you are done with the operation or the task, then you can go with the end and go with the same delimiter which we have used it for the beginning of it, right? Once we are done with the creation of a procedure, let us run it. And after that, we need to invoke that particular procedure. How do we do that? Either exec execute, or we can supply, or we can use a call method. So call get emp name is the procedure that I have defined here. Now this is an input parameter which is of type integer and which can be taken into the parameter called as ID. So in place of ID, 1 is going to be substituted. Now 1 is going to be taken in ID. We are going to execute this particular query where ID 1 matches to the employee ID. So look at the previous one. ID 1 matches with employee ID. We have employee name as Rajendra. So the same thing is going to be retrieved here, right? So that's how the stored procedures are going to be created and executed. right? So this is the simple procedure which can be followed. Go with create procedure name, specify in and out parameters, and specify the actual task to be performed, and then end it by the delete. Right? Once the procedure has been successfully executed, we need to invoke that particular procedure, like the way how do we call for our programming languages methods. Okay, right. So this is about a stored procedure. Moving on to the next topic, that is trigger. So trigger is again another complex integrity constraint that is going to be applied upon the database content. So trigger is similar to a stored procedure, so which is also going to be executed automatically in the database without specifying or invoking explicitly. So this is going to be happen depending upon the events which are going to be triggered by the users. Okay, let us see how these triggers are going to be worked, right? So we will be confused what is a trigger and a stored procedure, which we have already discussed. So stored procedure is nothing but a method which is going to be defined to perform a similar kind of or repetitive set of operations and which have to be explicitly invoked or make a call. When it comes to a triggers, we define a trigger based upon the action or the event which is going to be fired by the user. Let us say that I wanted to insert some data. So while inserting the data itself, the trigger have to be executed, right? So we will not going to specify it at that point of time. Second is that unlike with the stored procedures, triggers will never take any input value. Okay. Whereas in stored procedures, we take input values using in parameter and output values can be sent through the out parameter. And the last one is that whenever we have any transactions related to the triggers, you will not be able to, it cannot be committed or neither it can be rolled back because it deals with the triggers there, right? So let us look at here the syntax of the trigger. So create is a keyword, trigger is a keyword. We can mention the trigger name. And these are the events. At what point of time the trigger have to be fired or generated. Whether before the DML or DDL command have to be executed or after DML or DDL set of commands have to be executed. Right? On so and so table name for each and every row, or you wanted to perform that particular operation based upon the criteria, right? And what has to be performed can be specified within the trigger body. So this is the syntax for a trigger. Let us go with an example. Now, look at this student table. Here we have 5 attributes: roll number, name, age, city, marks. Okay. So let me write a trigger at the time of insertion of the data. Now, let me write this trigger. I'm going to create a trigger with a name called as calculate. Now, I wanted to calculate the marks of the student before I insert the record. Okay, so this should be applicable for each and every row. And I'm going to modify the existing marks with addition of 100 and given for the new marks. Okay, so the trigger I have already executed. So let me define it. Calculate 1. Yeah. So now the trigger has been executed. Fine. Now let me insert the data into the table. As of now, there were no changes. We have only the set of values. Insert into table name, that is student values. The first one is roll number. Let me go with roll number 10, which is not there as part of it. And then Giri. is the name of the student and age is taken as 19. And then the place, let me take it as Mirpinch. And then finally the marks, he got 34. Okay. So now I am inserting this record. Okay. So now once the record is being inserted, let me display the content of the table. Okay. Now 10 record with roll number 10 with the name Giri with the age 19 and the location Amirpet was inserted. Actually, what was the value which I have inserted here? I have inserted with 34, but in fact, I am getting the value to be 234, which means that the previously selected value is going to be added with the new value. So the new values are taken as 100 plus 34. Okay. So now marks equals new dot marks plus 100. So the new marks were taken as 34, but then I have done for 100 now. Yeah, let me insert another new record with number 11 with the name Isha with age 19. Let it be, yes, so 134. So let us retrieve the content of the table. So the new marks were taken it as the previous one, that is 100 plus 200, right? So every time when I am going to add that value, this final value is going to be modified. Okay, to that existing value, the new value is being added. So that's the reason it is going to perform in that manner. Now, the next one is, this is before insert. Let us move on to the next one, that is after insert. So let me create another table. Okay. So this is the experiment of database management system lab, wherein we need to create a trigger for increasing the sailors count. And the next experiment is to perform data validation. Okay. To make sure that none of the entities, none of the attributes should be left empty, right? So now here we are creating a trigger with the name TR1 after inserting in sailors table. For every row, I wanted to apply this. Sailors count should be modified with the existing value plus 1. Okay. So this is the So now as part of database management system lab, we have experiment number 4, wherein we need to write a trigger. We need to write a stored procedure to check whether the sailors count has been incremented and whether the data was validated or not. Okay, so this is our sailors table. So we have a sailor ID, sailor name, rating, and then age. All these are the data items that we need to insert. Now, when we closely look at the data items, the ratings were given in negative manner and the age was given above 100, which is not going to be acceptable, right? So, we are going to identify that these are the things and which have to be modified, which is going to be incorrect values have to be modified to the correct values. To do that, we are going to create a procedure here. Always start with the delimiter. Whatever the delimiter that we are using, the same thing should be used at the end of the stored procedure. So create a procedure. I am going to define my procedure name to be sailors validator. So we are beginning that. Now, I wanted to perform the deletion operation from the sailors table where age is lesser than 21 or age is greater than 100. So whatever the values which falls within this range have to be deleted from the table, or the age which is also taken as null. So remove that set of data records because that are not going to be useful for further processing of it. Now, the second validation technique that we have applied here is that we are going to change the ratings to be 1 wherever we encounter with negative values, right? So that it is going to be consistent data. And then the third validation thing that we are going to perform here is when you are trying to give any ratings value which is going to be greater than 10, so at least set up with the extreme value. Okay, so that's why we are giving it as 10. So that's it. We are done with the data validation of the Sailors table. So let us close it by using end and then the delimiter which we have used earlier. So after creation of this procedure, if the procedure was written properly, then you will be returned with query OK. Otherwise, it shows you with the SQL manual errors. Once the stored procedure is created, we need to invoke that. So use a call keyword and invoke that particular stored procedure. Right? Once you are done with it, we need to check, we need to retrieve the data items here. So the data items were modified. You can observe that. Okay. Now the next procedure is to perform the changes to the data items. Now, here I wanted to retrieve only the total number of students count. Those who have those who have scored merit marks. So here my criteria is that I wanted to retrieve all the students records who got above 70 marks. Okay. That head count I wanted from here. So that is what we are writing it in the procedure. And then we are running that. So with this experiment number 4 and then experiment number 6 is completed related to triggers and then stored procedures. Okay. Yeah. So that's it. This will be the end of our triggers comes.